Singapore's very first case of COVID-19 confirmed nearly a month ago.
The transmission from person to person to person, that's called sustained transmission.
As daily infections surge, 1,600 hospital beds are set aside just for COVID-19 patients.
A quarter of those deaths were recorded in the last week alone, and estimates indicate there could be between 40 and 50,000 deaths in the months to come.
The outbreak of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China in December 2019 has without a doubt shocked and thrust the world into fear, panic, and uncertainty. What was once rife with fear and anxiety has become part and parcel of daily life. In the summer of 2020, Professor Kelvin Chang of the Chinese University of Hong Kong wrote a research paper on the geographies of COVID-19. He observes that the thrown-togetherness of work and family relations in the household space is creating new tensions. A study by National University's Health Systems Mind Science Centre found that 61% of those working from home reported feeling stressed. What used to be clear, sacred boundaries of work and life is now tossed up into a blurred work-home setting. Where does work end and home begin? Before 2020, who would have ever predicted that one day our children will be camping at home for their home-based learning? Perhaps that explains why 9 in 10 Singaporean parents have seen signs of increased stress and worry. Additionally, a local survey of about 1,000 mothers by Focus on the Family Singapore found that the work-from-home situation added to the physical and mental load mothers already carried at home. The sharing of our limited space with our children has definitely stretched our limits of patience and well-being. As such, we have become more irritable and easily triggered. Holiday with family, evening hangouts with colleagues, weekend getaway with friends. What are these to those experiencing low moods and motivation in this season? According to the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, the deprivation of meaningful social connections with others can contribute to stress, anxiety, frustration, and hostility. Persistent fatigue, isolation, and a loss of personal space pushes people into negativity and helplessness, a constant state of limbo that never seems to end. Surely, even if the end is far-reaching, can we do more than just drag our feet daily? Beyond the dust, the pandemic reveals that the fault lines in our lives can and will be more pronounced. The emotional long haul of the pandemic is predictably and regrettably here to stay. I'm fine doesn't mean you're perfectly fine. Not burned out doesn't mean you're fired up. Many of us are struggling one way or another, and there could be a lot more things out of our control. Even as the world is grappling with the fallout of the coronavirus, an interesting observation was made. A study found that people with religion tend to have a higher positive mental health score, better resilience against stress and surprises. What sets these people apart? Could this be due to the concepts of community, commitment, and surrender to a higher being which religion frequently preaches about? If so, this could be the proverbial sugar to the bitter tea we have today, the hope that glimmers in the dark. Could this then be the way that we can build stronger bonds with our family? Do we always have to be picture perfect in front of others? Most importantly, how can we be honest with ourselves? Let's find out more.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Hope Singapore. We're so glad that you're joining us today, whether you're here in the Axis or joining us in any of our centers in the East, in the West, or if you're streaming online on any of our platforms. We are so glad that you could join us today. My name is Timothy. I'm one of the pastors here in Hope Singapore, and I'm going to be your host to take you through today's program, all right? So I want to say hi to the people online. If you give me a while, those people who are watching live, okay? I'm going to type something in the chat box to say hello to you, friends. Hello. And we are so glad that you're joining us today. All right. And you can see this in the chat box if you're watching us online, all right? On Church Online and on Facebook Live. We're so glad you're joining us. And today's program is titled, I'm Fine. And we're going to focus on some of the challenges that many people face as a result of COVID-19 and all the lockdowns and all the challenges that come together with it. In the last 2 years, because of COVID-19, there's lockdowns, there's health concerns, there's concerns about employment and finance. And also, the spotlight has been put on mental health. How anxiety, breakdowns, panic attacks, irritability seems to be more common. And just like the fonts that we put, I'm fine, when flipped over, it actually reads, save me. It could be a cry for help that on the surface we are fine, but actually we're struggling inside. I just found out this morning that today happens to be World Mental Health Day, and what better day to talk about mental health and to have our two experts in the field of mental health with us today. I'd like to introduce them to you. First up, we have Abigail Lee. Abigail is the Director and Senior Counselor and Play Therapist at Healing Heart. So Abigail, tell us more about what you do.
Thanks, Pastor Tim. Thanks for the invite. So I'm a counselor and a play therapist. So basically what I do is I see a wide variety of clients, children, families. I always say they come in a package, helping them through different life challenges that they might be experiencing, social, emotional, behavioral, trauma, mental health issues. And you notice that, like what Pastor Tim said, my title has the word play therapist. It's basically a specialized counseling approach where I use play to work with children through their most natural way of language, which is play.
That's wonderful. Abigail doesn't just work with children, but she also works with adults as well. Just about 15 minutes ago, I found out that she's the president of the Association of Christian Counselors in Singapore. So she's really an expert in the field, and we're so glad to have her here today to learn. And also we have Gideon. Gideon is the principal medical social worker at the Institute of Mental Health. Gideon, can you tell us what you do at IMH?
Thanks, Pastor. Hi, everyone. So I'm a medical social worker at the Institute of Mental Health. I think one of my key roles really is to look at the psychosocial well-being of our patients. We look into things like care planning, crisis intervention when there's abuse and violence cases. We do counseling as well, and a lot of support for the caregivers. So my portfolio really, I'm coming from the adult department and also the emergency services. So we have the privilege to really work with patients who are having and experiencing severe mental health illnesses, or even those who are just going through a very difficult time in their life.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more, because I think sometimes when you see the cases, right, it feels like, wow, they are very jialat. That's why they need to go and seek treatment, right? But maybe you can share with us a little bit more about your observations about people in general in Singapore. What have they been going through in the last 2 years because of COVID? Yeah.
I guess over the past 2 years, among the patients that I saw, a few common things that we begin to experience among them. I think number one would really be about the stress and the fatigue that a lot of the patients present. There's a lot of stress because of the unpredictable nature during this pandemic, and the lack of restfulness also for them. There's this sense of fatigue among them. I don't know about you, about the clients that you see, right? There's also this sense of that just very persistent low mood most of the time, all right? So really the sense of helplessness, we do not know when this entire crisis will be over. So there's just this sense of persistent low mood. And of course, we are quite concerned whether this low mood will eventually evolve into something else like depression or anxiety disorder. So these are things that we see and we are concerned about.
Yeah, and I think I also see like that swing between low moods and then high anxiety, leading from the stress and the uncertainty. And sometimes when new regulations come out, there's also this heightened sense of what's going to happen, what changes need to take place. And because of the uncertainty, I think there is also higher levels of irritability. Everybody is very edgy, a lot more temper tantrums. So even with younger children, we are hearing a lot more and seeing a lot more meltdowns and clinginess, neediness. And of course, on the extreme spectrum, then we also hear more cases of family violence, family disputes, some people even being so challenged mental health-wise that they might even be thinking of, suicide and ending their life because there's just this sense of helplessness and hopelessness.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you is that there's a spectrum and that generally people are experiencing low moods, stress, fatigue, edginess, but when it gets more and more intense, it can lead to depression, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts, violence, right? What do you think are the reasons for these behaviors? What do you think happens behind the scenes, right, that causes all these things?
Yeah, maybe I can go first. I think there could be many reasons, but based on my own observation, I guess in this period of time, really there's a lot of stress coming from that blurred line between their work and their personal life as well. I know many of us say that, it's a good thing to work from home because you can just wake up and then go to work immediately. There's very little time to prepare or to travel, but I guess this entire work from home arrangement has also caused a lot of inconvenience as well, right? So, because in the past, there's a certain structure, a certain routine in your life. You wake up, you have some time to calibrate yourself, you travel to work, and there's a very distinctive line between your work life and your personal life as well. But right now, many of us will experience that you wake up, the next thing you do is that you're on your computer and you're starting to work, and then, your living room become your office space, your kitchen become your pantry, and afterward, you're still sitting at the same sofa, right? And the worst, right, that sometimes, even when you're on leave, in the past, you can travel overseas, but right now, if you're on leave, people know that you're still in Singapore. They still call you, they still contact you. So really, there's a lot lesser personal space, I would say, very blurred line of their own personal and work life, and I guess that caused a lot of tension and stress to them. I could think of also two other quick reasons. I think the other reason is that there's also that sense of social isolation and that lack of social interaction too, right? So you don't normally meet the colleagues or the friends at your workplace. And the sense of stuckness, not just you have lost that connection with them, but you also get stuck sometimes in your family, most of the time.
In your enclosed space.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, that's okay if, let's say, things are quite all right at home, but if you have running children all the time at home, or worse still, sometimes we see that some of them, there are actually some fractures or some cracks in a relationship at home as well. And in the past, you could just exit when you're working, but now you're always at home most of the time. So sometimes these gaps become more prominent for them.
Can I just say, right, when I was during heightened alert, right, I received some egg tarts from my neighbor to let us know in advance that there's going to be renovation soon. So I was like, okay, very nice egg tarts. When the renovation started, right, oh my gosh, it was directly below my unit, and the drilling, right, and because it's heightened alert, all the cafes are closed, I can't work outside, I have to work from home. And when I sit on my toilet bowl, I'm not kidding, when I sit on my toilet bowl, it's shaking from the drilling. And it's like, obviously, right, how do you work from home in such an environment? Yeah.
And I think also to add on, it's that sense of sometimes in public transport, traveling to work and from work, it's a form of downtime. You can just deal with whatever that took place at work. You can plug in your headphones. And now with, working from home, it's like bedroom, bed, table. There's not much of a downtime space available, and everywhere you are walking and turning around, it's like, oh, there's another person here, oh, there's another person, and then with technology issues, if everybody is logging on, I don't know whether y'all faced it, but in the initial stages, it's like, how come the thing is lagging? How come the internet is not working? Because everybody was logging on at the same time, and then that increased a lot of anxiety and stress for everyone as well.
Yeah, I agree. So you realize that there's a lot of disruption in this period of time and a lot of uncertainty as well. There's just this sense that you don't have much control over your situation, right? There's a lot of change of the rules and regulation. It used to be, you can get it in 2, then 5, then 8, then back to 2. Right now, you work from home, you can go back to the office, the next day they ask you to work from home again. So really there's a sense of the unpredictability that people have to manage and deal with these days. And I recall that just last year, right, we have this particular case. Really just, it's so difficult. This particular gentleman, he's going through a difficult time in his career, in his workplace, and in his marital relationship. So out of desperation, right, that he had to call a particular helpline. And then he then seek help, and out of desperation to seek financial support, he actually then said that, if I do not get the help that I want, I will actually commit suicide and die along with my entire family. And that's a struggle because and then what happened after that is that there's a lot of things that happen. We have the child protection that came in, we have all the services that came in, and it kind of then worsened the relationship at home as well, and even the marital relationship too. So, it's things like that maybe the stories that we experience are not so drastic, but it really goes to show how desperate and restless people are feeling and experiencing during this period of time.
Yeah, I remember you, Abigail, telling me about uncertainty and what uncertainty does to us.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us more.
Yeah, and I think with uncertainty as well, maybe let me just share within the context of parents and families as well, just adding on to what Gideon mentioned. I think that during this period of time, there were so many changes and challenges, and we see that being translated in the areas of the community. So as adults, we have our time where we can maybe hang out with friends, and when it was like group of 5, maybe you are the number 6 one, and then you cannot be part of the group of 5, or you are very used to having weekly meetups with your family. And if you are from a bigger family, again, you can't gather at home, you can't be visiting grandparents, etc. So there's changes and there's also challenges that comes with community, and along with that, a lack of connection with each other. And I think translating that, adding on to that would be the area of caregiving as well. Previously, you can put your kids in childcare, and then I had a lot of parents who were very anxious because in the early stages, hardly do we know much about what is this COVID-19, what is this virus. Do I send my kid to school? Do I put my kid at home? But if I'm at home, I have to work from home. And I don't know if any of you experienced this, but in the early stages where home-based learning first started, parents had to scramble because there was only one device for the whole entire family. Now everybody is at home. People have to work. People have to log on, for children and all that, home-based learning. And for those who maybe are able to leave their children with grandparents, how are grandparents going to learn about technology and helping the kids to log on with their studies and all that? So a lot of changes, a lot of challenges that come along with that. And I think one thing for the children, it's very confusing. Because at home, after school, I go home, I play, or if I'm sitting at the table doing my homework, those of you with kids, halfway through, your kids run away to the kitchen, go get something, they sit in front of the TV, and then now to tell the children that you have to sit in front of the screen the whole time, and it's not to watch a cartoon, and it's not to watch a video, but it's to listen to your teacher. And for younger children, developmentally, social play is such a big thing for them. So we are teaching kids to learn to interact with each other, play with other kids, and now we are telling them, stay away, no playing. And those of us who are more active and exercising, we walk to our parks and the running tracks, and it's all fenced up, and it's all barricaded. So it just really adds on to that uncertainty that comes along with it.
And maybe the children don't even understand why this is happening, right? Because the adults, at least they watch the news, they can understand what's COVID-19 and why. But for children, they just suddenly all these things are imposed upon them.
Exactly. And I think it's very confusing because you're my mom, you're my dad, and suddenly you're becoming a teacher. And then this is home where I play and do a bit of homework, but now home is school. So, for children who are very concrete, black and white thinkers developmentally, it's very confusing for them.
I would imagine, right, that a child suddenly gets to stay home. Maybe at first quite fun, don't have to go holiday, right? But then it seems like it doesn't end, and then it seems like it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
And then they maybe ask like, hey, how come I'm home? Where are my friends?
Yes.
Maybe they're asking questions like that.
Yes, and I think also, children and all adults, I believe that we are all active beings. So to be over an extended period of time, being enclosed in a space, it's just really not healthy emotionally and physically as well.
I have as my own children, and I know many parents, right? Maybe the question on their mind, right? The children will be like, why can't I go to school? Where are my friends? There are some parents, right, that send their kids to school still amidst the virus and many cases, but most of their friends are at home. And they have problems as well because the kid goes to school, the friends are not there, and then the kid comes back and asks the parents, why must I go to school when all my friends are not going to school, right?
And especially when they have their good friends, then, my best friend Johnny, the parents say that they can stay at home, but how come I have to be in school?
Right.
Then it's not fair, not fair,
Yeah, and I think sometimes even for the children at home, right? And I face this as well. Because if I'm working from home, my wife is working from home, then the kids are just going to be like screen time or like, doing their own thing. And perhaps they're asking this question, why don't daddy and mommy have time, to spend with me? Because like we're always at home, but it's not like a weekend where daddy and mommy are like fully engaged. This like we're trying to juggle, this and that. I don't know. Does that contribute as well to that
I think
confusion?
So. And I think sometimes also because as adults, we were also all grappling with something that is so new. Everybody was pretty much on the same page in terms of how do we deal with this. So we're all trying to manage and handle and navigate that. And perhaps unconsciously, as adults, we have the expectation that the children are going to be thinking like adults, like, surely they know that this is a pandemic, this is uncertain, they really should behave themselves and look after themselves and do whatever they need, to care for themselves. So I think perhaps there's also the expectation that surely children will know what to do and to be quiet,
Right.
Yeah.
So with all this confusion going on and it's like stressful and it's new to everybody, right? Share with us what are the common solutions that parents attempt and why some of them may not be very helpful.
I think there are both positives that I've seen. I think one thing during this whole pandemic, it's not all negative. We have seen very creative ideas kind of come up and different ways and different approaches. I think one of the main things that I've observed from parents is piling on more work because home-based learning is very like, is this going to work? Is my child really learning? So maybe I should get more worksheets, maybe I should get more assessment book, maybe I should just pile on. And if maybe I give them more work to do, then they do their work, I do my work from home thing, and we're good. Except that it's ideal. Not many families experience it that way. So what do we then do? Okay, we outsource. We outsource to helpers called iPads, Disney TV, or any helpers along that line, right? Because if I just play a show or I just let you play game and have more screen time, that's going to help me be able to focus and concentrate. Not a bad idea, if I can say that, because it does, to a certain degree, provide some form of temporary relief and distraction. There are many among us adults as well where we, at times we go to our phone and we just need to like distract ourselves and flick. So temporarily it's good. The challenge becomes when they become hooked and they become so fixated on it that it becomes very difficult to tear them away from it.
Right, because it becomes like now the daily amount of screen time that I get from like maybe 1 to 2 hours, it could be like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, right? Then to scale back and wean that off is going to be another challenge. Right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, I've gotten to know a good friend during the pandemic because I had to be in different time zones. So my good friend became Mr. Google. So parents, I found, also started Googling. There are a lot of information on Google, so they started Googling to see what can be done, what can I do with my kids during this period of time, during lockdown, etc. Again, not a bad idea, except that it can become very confusing when you read one thing that tells you to do this, and then you read another one, it's like, hey, how come this one tell me to do something else? And then as parents, sometimes we want the steps. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Again, helpful if it works for your family, but not every family is the same. So when we are applying the steps and being very fixated on it and not really looking at what works for my family and for my kids, I think that's where the challenge
and can I say, like, as a
Yeah.
parent, right, it's so confusing because I read online and then they tell, hey, stick to a routine, a certain structure, do a certain this and that, right? Then it doesn't quite work out for me at that point of time. And the confusion for me is that, is it because I need to persist with it and piah through it? Or am I needing to calibrate it, but I'm not an expert, so I don't know how to calibrate it? So it's very confusing. It's like, do I force it in, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as Pastor Tim was sharing, it just came to mind. I actually know a friend who followed the whole idea of structure and routine to the T, and they will literally, even though the child didn't have to log in until a certain time, they make the child get up at still the same time, wear school uniform, and then walk around the house as though like you're walking
Morning
to school,
assembly,
morning
is it?
assembly. That's it, got national anthem somehow, say pledge. And then, okay, sit in front, and then ting, recess. It worked for a while because the kids found it fun. And then the kids got really bored, like, why do I have to wear school uniform when I'm at home? Yeah.
And maybe share with us, when the kid goes through something that we don't quite understand, and when the kid starts to act or maybe irritable, edgy, or withdraw a little bit, right? How do parents respond when they like don't quite get what the kid's going through?
The extreme one.
Yeah.
Oi, shut up.
What? Sorry, what?
Like, shh.
Okay.
I think when we, again, it's a spectrum, in terms of the responses towards the kids. And I think on this note, I want to also encourage parents to give yourself some credit that these last 2 years have been really difficult. And I think many times we tend to focus a lot on what have I not done well, what can I do better, when really I think we give ourselves less credit than really we should. And I think a lot of parents have had done well, having to navigate through this uncertainty, and I think they really need to give themselves credit for that.
We're going to give the parents a break. Now we're going to talk about the working adults, all right? So Gideon, can you share with us, what are some of the commonly attempted solutions of working adults going through this pandemic?
Yeah, I guess first of all, we need to know that humans are very adaptable to new challenges or situations in life. So we see that during this period of time, people are trying a new lifestyle for themselves. Last year we see that people are going to different kind of new hobbies, like the Dalgona coffee, going to baking until they have no more baking materials in NTUC, right? Some of us went into exercising. I went to exercising last year, and then this year I gained back all the weight. So, so we try different things. So I think it's not all that bad in the sense that people do learn how to adapt and to adjust the new situation. Of course, I think we also see new issues as well, where people try to cope in different ways, like the overspending. We see
online
people,
shopping.
Yeah, online shopping.
10-10, right, today?
10-10, 9-9-8-8. Every month is a celebration for them, right? So sometimes then there's that new issue where they incur certain debts or just that overspending because of this new habit as well. I think we are also seeing things like, for example, self-diagnosis. I think it's not something new to us. Even in the past, people do go online to find out more about the kind of conditions or the symptoms that they're experiencing. But especially right now, during this pandemic, people are just looking at the different mental health signs and conditions that they're experiencing. I mean, there's nothing wrong going online. Google has so much information online as well. But I guess the challenge is whereby, what do you do with this information? Right? So sometimes when people, they come across certain signs and symptoms, there is that 50-50 certainty. Okay, it seems to connect, but I'm not quite sure whether do I really have this particular condition. Right. Where do I find out more? Where do I seek help? If it's a mental health concerns, will there be stigma? Will people understand me or will they judge me? So these are the concerns.
Or maybe they list like 10 symptoms, then they're like, Tiala, I got 9 out of 10. And then they worry.
Yeah.
But they don't know what to do with that worry, right?
Exactly, And right now, this pandemic is such a new situation information to all of us here, right? So even if you search online, you may not get the kind of answer or the information that you hope to get as well. So these are the challenges when people are self-diagnosing themselves. So we're always very mindful of that. I guess the last part that people don't usually talk about is our dependency on social media these days, because really we are at home most of the time, right? Especially if we're working from home, nobody would know if you just tune into YouTube, to Facebook, to Instagram and things like that where you're working. So people cope with their stress, people try to occupy their time by using social media excessively. And I guess sometimes that will be a concern as well, because social media is always very entertaining, it's always quite informative, but in some sense, social media also tends to portray only a certain aspect of what the creator wants to showcase, right? So it's a platform where people either display themselves or they look at how others display themselves, but there's only that one side of them. So sometimes then if you keep just depending on your understanding based on what you can see on social media, then you may find that, hey, how come everybody seems to be coping well? They seems to be, enjoying the slice of heaven during this pandemic, but I'm not doing so. So it creates a sense of worry and insecurity in you. Wonder why are you so different from the rest of them?
Right, like everybody else seems to have figured it out, right? How to have fun, how to do TikTok videos during the pandemic, and yet I'm struggling, just to get my daily life going, right? Now, how about social media and the effect on parents? Like, how does social media affect parents and the way they go about?
Yeah, I think similar to what Gideon was saying, we see photos or we see like Insta story, happy family, smiling, and then everyone is like, what? I mean, one of the things that I look through and I see, how do they everyone is so well-groomed. I mean, hairdresser will close, during, I was like, they're all so well-groomed. And then I see parents cut their hair. And then, for me, right, it's like, okay, everyone is doing well, everybody is figuring out. Maybe as a parent, I don't feel like then I am not doing as good, and maybe I should not even reach out. I can't even reach out. And would they even understand me, because they are all they have all figured it out and they are doing so well. Yeah.
So it causes even more isolation, right? Now, we talk about the problem, and we talk quite extensively about what happens behind the problem. Maybe you can share with us from your expert vantage point, right? Or at least in your field, what really does help? What can we do as parents and as working adults that can really help us to get through this period of isolation and uncertainty?
I go first, Alison. So with parents and children, I think the first point that we really need to look at is parents, look at yourself first. And my husband says this to my dad quite a bit. He will always, dad, my kanchong, like steady, like relax. And I think many times, because it's uncertain, we can be very jumpy. And we try to rush to have a solution and to fix things when that may not be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think first of all, parents learning to be calm, acknowledge to yourself first, okay, what's going on the inside of me? And am I in an appropriate or good emotional and mental state to be communicating or talking to my child? So I think in terms of the self, it is okay if you need a timeout.
Yeah.
Just walk away a few minutes rather than I have to attend to this now, and then you explode and everybody starts escalating.
Yeah, I think it's happened so many times for me, especially in the last 18 months or so, where I find myself, right, as a parent, right, yelling at my 5-year-old, yelling at him to say, control yourself, don't behave like that. And I think after that moment, right, when I take a step back and reflect and Holy Spirit speaks to me, then I realize that actually what I'm demanding out of my 5-year-old, I can't even demonstrate that as a dad. I'm telling him to keep it together and keep in control and don't behave like that. I am the one losing it. I'm not, I as an adult, supposedly more mature, but I'm not able to keep it together, right?
Yeah, and I think not to go too much into the technicalities, but when we talk about neuroscience, when that emotional brain part is on heightened, so it's like fight, flight, or freeze, your rational brain actually doesn't function very well. And that's what happens many times, not just with parent-child, but even with couple relationships as well. So taking a look at self and having that awareness of, okay, what's going on here?
Right.
And I liken it to also, it's been a while since we all traveled, but put on the oxygen mask for yourself first, attend to yourself first.
Yep.
Before looking at putting on the oxygen mask.
And don't make
for
any
your child.
big threats or decisions
Yes.
when we're angry, right? Okay,
Yeah.
got
yeah.
it.
And I think the second thing then is once that is kind of established, to really seek to understand what's going on with your child. And something that a principle that I teach parents is the RAVE principle, R-A-V-E. So learn to recognize feelings and thoughts. Recognize and notice that something is not looking very good or something doesn't feel right with your child. Recognize that and then acknowledge. And it can be, and you don't have to be 100% accurate. You can just go to your child and just indicate that, hey, I noticed that there is something different. I noticed that you're not sharing as much, you're not talking as much. And sometimes it may not be anything. Sometimes it might just be like, I'm in one of those days where it's like, I really don't want to talk. On other days, it's an opportunity then for the child to open up to be able to share more. And V talks about verbalizing and ventilate the feelings and thoughts. For some of your children or teenagers, they might be very verbal. The minute you ask them, hey, what's happening? They readily, openly share, and then they give you a whole download of what's happening, and you can process it with them. For some children and teenagers, they may not be very verbal, and there might need to be other ways of helping them to process that. And when I say the word ventilate, and we think of the word vent, it's like, just let it out, but ventilate, the meaning of the word ventilate actually has a different definition. It actually means to discuss and to look at it closer. Let's examine it together. So let's examine together, hey, what's happening? Learning to recognize, acknowledge what's going on, and how do I then release and verbalize it out? And it can be through different expression. So I did have a family, for example, who came in, and it wasn't like they were very jialat. It was very wholesome family. They're doing well, but just during this period of time, a little bit challenging, and one of their kids has always been very joyful and very joyous, but just suddenly went silent, and they recognized it, they acknowledged, they just didn't quite know how to help her process. So when they came in as a family, one of the things that we talked about was different ways of expression. And for this girl, her way of expressing is through dance and movement. So literally, we came to a point where she was able to express herself to her parents, where if she doesn't feel good, she will do, or if she feels happy, and then it will be a more flowy. So it signals like that that the parents have learned a shared language within the family,
right,
to then say, hey, okay, this is what you're doing, and then this is what's happening. Let's explore, which is the last letter.
Right.
Let's explore coping and managing strategies about how do we help you to feel better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got the self, which is parents become first, then the seek,
Seek.
which is to listen, try to understand more,
Yeah.
and the last one.
The last one, probably I'll say search. Search out for social support, and not just for your kids, but for parents as well. I think it's really, really important because parents, we are working, we are having to clean the household, we are having to do a lot. Search out for safe social support, even if it's just a text message, video call, search out support. And I think that's really, really important in terms of care for the self.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to talk about working adults, and this will be relevant for many, many people. Gideon, share with us, right, for working adults, what will be helpful for them in going through this whole period of uncertainty, instability, that we are constantly bombarded with in the last 18 months?
Yeah, so maybe I can share a little bit on some of the things that I'm learning as I'm trying to journey with my patients this period as well. I think number one, the first thing to consider really is about setting that routine structure into your daily life and living. So because we mentioned earlier on that during this period of pandemic and crisis, what really come across is that sense of lack of control and unpredictability. So how you want to manage that is that you really want to be able to insert some structure and routine in your daily life. right? There's a time for you to rest, there's a time for you to have your decent meals. And really, when it comes to mental health, two of the most significant indicators are you sleeping well?
Yeah.
Are you eating well as well? So these are the two very basic fundamentals that you have to just safeguard in your life. There's a time to draw boundaries, where it's time for you to take a break from work. Take a break from work. Spend time with your loved one or the things you enjoy as well. So I think that's really number one.
So, but like, let's say, there's some people that, it's time to sleep, right? It's time to sleep early because I need to wake up early tomorrow, that sense of routine and structure. But you feel that I've been working so hard all day, right? I just want to binge watch Netflix, you know what I mean? And it's just like me time right now. It's like 报仇, like this is my time and revenge. But what would you say to that?
That's me. Yeah. So we do struggle with that as well.
No wonder your eye bags this morning.
Really? I thought I put eye mask. Okay. So, I guess it's always good to have that, to aspire to be able to maintain some kind of routine and structure into your life. Sometimes at the beginning, it is a lifestyle habit, so you may not be able to achieve exactly as what you set for yourself. I think the key is also not to be too harsh or too hard on ourselves. It's okay to take baby steps. If, let's say, for example, you used to sleep at, 3 a.m., then set a realistic goal for yourself, and if you aim to sleep by 12, but in the end you sleep at 1 a.m., and that's okay. At least there's some progress for yourself, and you make yourself accountable to yourself. You find people around you that can do so. But most importantly is to understand the reason and the intention behind it. It's not so much to create a new lifestyle. The entire idea behind it is to be able to gain back some space, gain back some sense of control and structure within your life. I think that's the more important principle. I think the other part also really I will always encourage people is that we are going through a crisis and a very difficult time. Just be very shameless to seek help, to talk to people. Really, at the end of the day, there's no shame in seeking help at all. So because sometimes people are just worried that will I be judged? Will they not understand me? And I think it's always helpful to find just a few people. You don't have to share to everyone, just to find a few people that you can trust, you can share. You know that they care for you, they love you, and they will accept you for who you are as well. And I guess there are also the moments whereby if you need to, you do have to see a professional, and that's a good thing to do. A lot of time when my patients see me at the emergency, not a lot of people want to come to IMH to seek treatment, right? So there's always the sense of fear and stigma. But my very first statement and language to them really always be that I'm so glad you came to see us. I'm so glad you made this decision. It's very humble of you. It's very insightful of you to take care of yourself and to seek help. So I think there's no shame, and we should all be very open. If you need help, let's seek help. If you need to see a professional, just see a professional.
If I can just interrupt you right now, we have a number of different hotlines and places that you can go if you need to seek help. And you can find that compilation on our People Helping Ministry on our website. So you can go to hopesingapore.org.sg/peoplehelping, and in there, there are a few places that you can go for to seek the professional help you need. And you don't need to go and seek professional help when it's like really, really, really serious. Maybe you can go and when you notice certain changes or differences, right? And then the professional just says, hey, I think you're really doing all right, and that's an assurance to you as well. It doesn't always have to be bad.
That's right, And maybe the last thing I have learned, I want to share as well, is really to be able to reframe during crisis too. I think crisis is also a period that we can reframe and to relook at how we are living our life as well. In peacetime, in times where things are very stable in our life, we don't question things like what's our value, what's our meaning, what's our purpose, what's our life direction. But it's through crisis that, because things become very unsettling, it's very destabilizing, that people begin to wonder, what do I want to do with my life? What's the next step I want to take? What are some issues that I've been sweeping under the carpet that it's time for me to address them one by one as well? So I guess that's also the reason why sometimes people describe and remind that crisis in Chinese is 危机. It talks about how, in Chinese is 有危险就有机会. When there's a crisis, there's also that opportunity as well for you to be able to change things around, to look at things from a new perspective, for a new idea also, So, and even as sharing that, I got a reminder of this particular patient I came across that really left an impact in me about how that crisis can also be very life-changing and transforming too. So I recall there was this patient that I saw, I think there was a couple of years ago. So he was really going through a crisis, not because of pandemic, but because of his personal life. So he already all along have some issues with his family. There are some strained relationships with family members. There have been some work difficulties at his workplace too. But the trigger that came upon that brought along that crisis would be that when he went through the breakup with his girlfriend. So in his perspective at the point of time, this is really crisis because I already don't have a very good relationship with my family and my workplace as well. And then now my only support, my girlfriend, is gone also. So what happened was that when he saw me, he told me that actually he came to see me because he was feeling suicidal, but he wanted to seek help. But what was more impactful for me was that actually he had very concrete thoughts. And what he did was that before he came to see me at the hospital, he actually traveled overseas. So his plan was to travel overseas and eventually to commit suicide overseas to just find a valley that he can jump off when nobody will know what happened to him. That's how he wanted to exit from this world because life was really quite meaningless for him because of this particular crisis. And then he shared to me that just before he actualized that plan, he don't know for what reason he went into this cafe to get his usual coffee. And it happened that that cafe was a Christian cafe. So for some reason, maybe because of how he looked, maybe he looked really very downcast. So the owner actually initiated conversation with him and along the way found out about the stressor that he was going through and the very poor mood that he was experiencing too. I mean, I'm not sure whether he actually confided and shared about his suicidal thoughts. But what was amazing was that during that encounter, towards the end of that visit at the cafe, the pastor actually handed to him the pastor's very own first Bible to this particular patient. And what he said to him was that, let's call him Leonard, let's give a name, right? So he spoke to Leonard and say that, I don't know what is this conversation about, but I just felt that you need this Bible and this hope much more than me, and I give it to you. And that was the changing point for him. It was that reframing period moment for him as well, for him just to realize that, the fact is that nothing actually changed. The crisis is still there, the poor mood is still there, but there's a shift in him to recognize that, actually there is still someone bigger up there looking out for me, and there's someone who truly cares, and maybe perhaps life is still worth the living because someone cares for me.
And he didn't take his life.
He didn't, and then he came to Singapore. He came back to Singapore, and then he came to the emergency, and that's how I saw him.
Thanks for sharing Leonard's story, right? It's really interesting that even though the circumstances of his life didn't change, still going through the same thing, but it's almost like everything became new. His entire outlook, perspective on life changed as a result of the encounter in the cafe, right? And I like what you said, that crisis,危机, crisis can be accompanied by opportunity. If there are some crises, some dangers and challenges brought about by COVID-19, right? Perhaps that could be an opportunity. And as a pastor, right, oftentimes people ask me, do more people come to faith, do more people convert to Christianity or become Christians, right, during a crisis? People often ask me that now. And my answer is that it often depends, because there are people who come to faith during a crisis because they realize that, wow, they can't do it alone. It's too difficult. They need help, and they decide not to be self-reliant anymore, and they just decide to seek help. But if not for the crisis, maybe they wouldn't think that way. They will still continue on to be self-reliant and think that it's their own smart, their own hard work. So a crisis helps to humble them and recognize that actually they are not it, and no need to be self-reliant. But I also see people come to faith in peacetime as well. That means that they don't need a crisis. They recognize that there's blessing and the stability that they have, right, in their peacetime, right? Actually, it's not just their own doing, not that they earn by themselves because they're smart, they work hard. They acknowledge God's hand in their life, and even in peacetime, they can come to faith as well. So I'm wondering, what do you think, Gideon? Do you think that more people come to faith during a crisis?
Yeah, definitely. I guess the crisis may not just be because of the current pandemic. I think we all have faced crises at different juncture of our life. And I think to answer that question, first of all, we must say that humans are really very resilient and adaptable to the situation. Yep. We find ways to manage and to find back that control. But I think many of us will also recognize that there will just be that seasons and those moments whereby no matter how much effort you put in, no matter how much resources that you have, you just can't control the situation all the time. You just can't predict the outcome all the time as well. I guess these are moments whereby people realize that, hey, actually, I am not as able, I'm not as in control as I used to think I am. And these are also moments whereby some of the issues that we may have buried underneath, that may surface, and I've come across a lot of patients that is during crisis that they begin to sense, issues like coping with the sense of not feeling good enough, the need to be loved, the need to manage losses in their life also. And so I would say that actually these are really moments whereby people begin to turn towards God,
It's more reflection.
Exactly, yeah. And so I always thought that the journey of managing crisis is a very spiritual process. It's a very spiritual journey as well. And people begin to realize that, I may be searching for answers when there's crisis, but I may never get an answer. Or some people, they may find an answer, but they still don't find peace in their life, in their heart, even when they have those answers. So really people will then turn to God, turn to religion. Yeah.
I see how crisis can be a trigger for people to want to be more open to God. But I also see, people turning away from God during a crisis. And people maybe as a result of the bad things that are happening or the challenges, then they blame God. Like, if God is a good God, why are all these things happening to me? If God really loves me, if God is really the God out there. And I see even people and even Christians, that they turn away from God and they move further away from God during crisis as well. So I would say that in my years as a pastor, the common ingredient for people drawing closer to God is not so much crisis or no crisis. I think the common denominator, the common ingredient for people drawing closer to God is humility, where a person who is humble in a crisis, they recognize that I need God. I can't do this by myself. I'm not created to be self-reliant. I need God. In fact, even in peacetime, they recognize that all the blessings that I have, all the stability that I have, all the peace, it comes from somewhere. There must be a God watching out for me. And the opposite of humility, is pride. Pride that, we think that, we can do it. I don't need help from anyone. I don't want help from people around me. I don't need help from God. I want to rely on myself. I don't want to feel weak. I don't want to feel needy, And there's this verse in the Bible that goes, God opposes the proud, but gives grace or shows favor to the humble. And a crisis is an opportunity to test, Are we really humble? Are we willing to humble ourselves before others? And most of all, before God. I grew up, and many of you don't know this, I grew up watching WWE wrestling. And that was one of my sources of entertainment, big time. And there's this warning that they always put on the screen that goes, kids, please do not try this at home, But I always try it at home, you know what I mean? Like, I have a brother who's 5 years younger than me, and I always try the wrestling moves on him. So I will put him in some extremely painful wrestling submission holds, Like this, until he would give up. He's 5 years younger than me. And like just to overpower him until he's like, give up, submit, cry, who's your daddy? And then sometimes, I get the picture that in a crisis, God is like putting us in a submission hole. Sometimes we think that way, that God is trying to, in a crisis, overpower us with pain, with suffering, until you cannot take it. Then you say, okay, you are the God, and you are bigger than me, you are stronger than me. And He's like trying to force us into submission. And if you get that picture, I don't blame you, because it can seem that way, that in a crisis, God causes us pain and suffering, so that we will recognize that we need Him. But, even from the Bible verse that says God opposes the proud, it seems like God is trying to overpower us. But maybe you can share with us, Abigail, why can pride be such a problem for human beings?
I think if we were to give pride a voice, it's almost like pride says, I know it all and I don't need anybody else because I have it all. And I think what it does is pictorially, if you can just imagine, it's like a brick wall that is just being built up. And nobody else can penetrate, nothing else can enter through the brick wall. And so when it comes to faith, it's almost like, even God can't enter because, Jesus stands at the door and no, it's not going to budge through. And that becomes a problem because then it's isolating.
Right. Pride not just it's not just about self-reliance, but it isolates,
Yes.
Then we feel like really, really lonely.
Yes.
And when we're proud, we think that no one cares, no one understands, no one can help us. God doesn't care, God doesn't understand, and God can't help me. And so pride can really isolate. Sometimes we think of sin, right? I don't know if you heard this word sin. We think of sin as like lying, cheating, stealing, adultery, murder. And it's true, all these things are sin, right? But the root of sin is a decision to live apart from God. Actually, the root of it is that sin is a decision to live rebelliously against how God wants us to live. And because of that decision, right, sin, right, so it may act out in adultery, or it may act out in, lust or cheating or anger or rage or whatever. But the root of it is that we choose to live a life that is apart from God. We want to be self-reliant. We want to do it our way. And because of that, right, it isolates. Sin isolates us from God. There's a verse in the Bible that tells us that it's our sins that cut us off from God. Sin isolates, sin separates, and sin cuts us off from God. Sometimes we think that sin is like, oh, God is punishing us for our sin. Like we do wrong, then God can't wait, right? He's watching from heaven. He can't wait to smite us with a mighty hand when we do something wrong, right? But actually, the root of it is that we are simply reaping the consequence of our own choice. Like we choose to live apart from God, and we're getting what we want. We're just separating ourselves further and further away from God. We get isolated from God, separated, and when we do that long enough, it gets really, really painful. But remember earlier that I shared the verse about how God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble, shows favor to the humble, right? That's not the complete picture of that passage. Let me just complete that picture. It says God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Then it says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. When we step away from our pride and we humble ourselves before God under His mighty hand, then He will lift us up at the right time. And in the meantime, we can cast all our anxieties on Him because He cares for us. And I want to let you know, my friends, that God cares for you. He understands what you're going through. He wants to help you. He loves you. And maybe the picture of the wrestling submission hole, right, is not the best idea to describe how God relates to us in a crisis. Maybe another picture is something like this. Imagine a son or a daughter climbs up a tree, and the father's like, it's very dangerous, come down. But the son or the daughter says, I want to do it my way. And Daddy, you're just a killjoy. I want to climb, and he's climbing higher and higher and higher and higher, and it's getting more and more dangerous. I think the picture of how God relates to us in this crisis is that the father waits at the base of the tree patiently, ready to catch the son when he falls. And I think that's how God relates to us in a crisis. He's not trying to smite us or trying to make us feel enough pain and suffering until we give up. But He's at that place where He's waiting for us to just fall so that He can catch us and keep us safe. That's how much He loves us. And maybe, I'm not sure whether the wrestling submission hole or the picture of a child climbing on the tree is a perfect analogy, because at the end of the day, these are all analogies, right? But maybe the best picture to represent what Jesus has done for us is this picture. Jesus on the cross. This is Jesus. This is God's one and only Son, Jesus. And God sent Jesus to the cross so that we can be reconciled with Him. That through the death of Jesus, He paid a price for our sins. And one verse in the Bible encapsulates this beautifully. It goes, God demonstrates His own love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, all the sins that we have committed, the pride, the stealing, the lying, the cheating, the adultery, while we were still sinners, God sent Jesus to die on the cross for our sins. God doesn't just desire you to give up because of the pain. God desires relationship with you. God wants to draw closer to you. And perhaps, if not for this crisis that you're going through right now, and maybe you're not so open to God, but maybe where you are right now is just that time where your heart is open, you're ready, and God can draw you into a relationship with Him. And right now, I want to share with you a story of a couple called Calvin and Grace, and how they drew closer to God through their crisis. Let's watch this.
My name is Kelvin. I'm the executive chef in Wildlife Reserve Singapore. When I completed my national service, I started as a kitchen helper. From there, I developed myself. I've been to the kitchen portal, I've been to the stewarding, I've been to the cook 1, cook 2, all this kind, all the way up to what I am today. It's a long journey. At the point of time when I was holding a junior position, I tend to spend more than what I earn. I was holding quite good salaries, so money to me is easy. I don't worry about money at all. I just spend future money. I have a lot of credit card. In my mind, is that I don't worry. That every month my salary coming, I just pay off everything from there. Spend on food outside, park, clubbing, all this kind of stuff. So I bought sports car. I just want to look good. That's all. So I become very cocky at the point of time. That's where when I start to resign from the place and went to business at the time, I thought using my skill, I can make a profit out of it. But I was wrong. That's where all the accumulation of the debts that during my spending start to pile up kind of thing. When you default some payment, the overnight, the late payment charges, all this kind of thing, all comes in. And when my financial start not to balance up, I become very hot-tempered and always throw tantrums, Until one day, my brother-in-law, his brother, tell me, do you calculate how much money you owe the bank? I said, I did not. Oh, then he give me a good scolding like that. Then I start to come to my sense. I tabulate all my accounts. Oh, to my shop, it's a lot of money. Then I start to get panic, that kind of thing. Later, I wind down my business. I went back to the hotel. I start to be very arrogant and scold people. Whenever plates was delivered to me, I'm not satisfied, throw away the plates or this kind of thing. So not many people like me. Yeah. Of course, I'm frustrated with myself. I was quite down at that time, seriously. So why I end up in this stage now? I work 3 part-time jobs. When I have some free times, I think it over all my past 20, 30 years life, my still start to drop. Why should I end up in this area? I never asked for anybody for help. I'm quite a confident guy that I want to do things all by myself. I do 3 jobs. Slowly I overcome it within, I think, 8 years. Seriously, these 8 years, I've been working damn hard. No holidays for my family, nothing. No outing, nothing, no restaurant, all basic things.
The whole thing is that it's a disaster. The whole of these years that we went through, it's a kind of very mixed feeling. I accepted Christ, but I was like a half-baked Christian.
I was quite against Christianity at the point of time, because it's very dominant, that kind of thing. Why must I believe in Jesus Christ, that kind of thing? So I was very against it. And when people say that, God provides, so when I'm in trouble, who's going to help me? Nobody, only I myself. I overcome all these things until my wife told me that at the point of time, he returned to Jesus already. Quietly, he told me that, hey, actually these 8 years, I've been praying for you, that.
Even though I'm worried, I pray for him, I pray for him for his safety, for God's protection. Every day when he come back, he's safe and sound. Gradually, things get better and life starts to get back to normal.
Initially, I don't quite believe it. But after a few years of reflection, I felt it. How possible that, a man who do 8-hour job, barely 3 or 4 hours sleep, can overcome this kind of, start to realize, oh, I see.
I feel that God really has His timing to get things changed. I thank my CASA LG for putting in an effort to bring Kelvin in. They really share the goodness of God with him, and they are not pushy. They let him experience, how actually God's work and plan on him and to the family also.
One of my Christian friends said, you got nothing to lose to believe in Jesus. You got more good than harm, I say. I start to think it over and over again. So why do I try? Maybe things will be getting better, you know. So I start to accept Christ. I try to do Bible study, know more about God's words, you know, do some prayer, and things start to getting better and better. I can find peace, comfort. My temper start to slow down. I'm not so hot-tempered, like throwing plate. Even my staff tell me, my boss tell me, hey, you what do you do? I say, no. You accept Christ? I say, yeah, I will accept. Oh, that's good. I see some changes in you. So, coming out from my bosses and some of my friends, I think that is a very strong words for me. Because I myself did not notice that I have changed. Ever since I accepted Christ, even things happen, it become very minimal problem. Last time, my problem, I ever to solve, but take a lot of effort. But now, things are getting smoother.
He nowadays, he can tell me also when I'm jumpy. Then he'll tell me, hey, Bible say like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes my wife is jumpy, I say that, you know,
say to me.
Yeah, I'll use God's word to cool down her temper. Now she's more tempered than me.
I'm really thankful that God giving him the strength to pull through all this. To me, God played a very important part of in this whole process of thing after I get married. Yeah, until the children is so old.
I want to thank God that you come to my life, cool down my tempers, and at the same time give me a peace of mind. Even though some things happens, you're able to soften it, give me wisdom to solve the issues. To me, as what my friend had mentioned, if you are in a tight situation or difficult situation, turn your direction to God. He will give you peace and let you think wisely. You got nothing to lose. You got everything to gain. My only regret is that I know God too late. If I knew it earlier, I think life would be much better.
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken, have been set free, have been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Whoa, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes. Lay yourself down, raising up the broken to life. You take a failure, you take a weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel. the broken to life.
Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And today you're watching this, perhaps if not for a crisis, your heart won't be in the place that it is today. Perhaps because of the crisis, you're a little less self-reliant, you're a bit more open, and you're willing to consider that perhaps there's a God out there who loves me, who cares for me, who wants to have a relationship with me. And if this is you, I want to let you know that God loves you so much, and He's all ready to draw you into a relationship with Him. And if this is you, I want to invite you to take the first step to knowing this God by saying this prayer together with me. We're going to put the prayer on the slide, on the screen, and I'm going to lead you in this prayer where I'll pray one line and you can pray after me. Most importantly, you say the words with your mouth and mean it as much as you can in your heart. Some of you are going to say it for the first time in your life. Some of you have backslided away from God over the years, but today you're watching this, your heart is open, you're ready to come back to God. And right now, I want you to pray this prayer together with us as well. So let's pray this prayer and invite Jesus into our life. Let's pray. Say, Dear Jesus. One more time, say, Dear Jesus. I confess that I'm a sinner, and I want to thank you for dying on the cross for my sins. Right now, I invite you to come into my life. Be my Lord, be my Savior. Help me to become the kind of person I was created to be. I pray all this in Jesus' name, and everybody say, Amen. Amen. Now there's another group of you watching this, either in our centers or you're watching us online, and you're not ready yet to make a decision to become a Christian or to go into the Christian faith because you have questions. Maybe you want to find out more. Maybe there are some things that you're still not very certain about. And I want to let you know that we have good news for you. That over the next few weeks in our church, all over the island, in the east, in the west, in the central parts of Singapore, we're going to have small groups that are going to conduct this program, this 4-week program where you can learn more about Jesus and the Christian faith, no strings attached. So these groups will be conducted mainly on Zoom, and they're going to be young adults, they're going to be families with young children, and even older families, different demographic all over the island. We're going to find a group near your place, near your house, and these groups will be conducted mainly on Zoom for a start, but in time to come, hopefully when the restrictions ease up, that there are going to be some sessions in person in small groups as well. And in these small groups, you're going to be able to ask any questions that you want to find out more about the Christian faith, no strings attached and no pressure. And at the end of these 4 weeks, if you find that you don't want to be a Christian, it's okay. You can just walk away. And like what Calvin or his friend said, actually, what do you have to lose? You really don't have much to lose, but you have possibility to gain a lot. You can gain life that is truly life as you walk with God. So if you're interested to join us in one of these small groups over the next 4 weeks, here's how you can do so. You can indicate your interest by scanning the QR code on the screen. And you can do that right now. If you're watching in any of our centers, just stick out your smartphone, scan the QR code on the screen. Or if you're watching us online, you can simply click on the link that is in the chat box on Facebook Live, Church Online, YouTube, wherever you're watching this. And if not, if you're watching this and there's no link, there's no QR, you can't scan the QR code, simply type hopesingapore.com/Jesus. Less than 5 seconds, you'll get there. Fill in a few simple details and we'll get in touch with you. We want to find you a group that suits you. One near your place, one with people around your age group that can get connected with you. So you can do that right now. And for those friends whom a friend sent you the link or a friend invited you to join our service today, you don't need to fill in this link if you don't feel comfortable with, but you can let your friend know, hey, I don't mind finding out more in this small group setting. Let me know the details. And your friend will help you along. And I'm also going to give your friend permission to ask you, hey, would you be interested to join us for this small group program? If you are, let me get you connected. All right? So we really love for you to join us over the next few weeks, because I believe that the questions that you have can be answered and we can slowly begin to help you understand more about the Christian faith. So let's do that right now. Either you're scanning online or you're texting a friend, you can do that right now.